The better?
That's much better. Thank you very much. So as I was saying, I actually have an Android device, I have a Windows device, and I also have an iPhone. So just so you know, I have tested all of these for mobile journalism before you accuse me of being an Apple fanboy. The reason that all the training that I do is actually on Apple devices is very simple. They have, by far, the best professional apps for journalists in the market. There may be the same amount of apps on the Android store as there are on the iPhone, on the iTunes store, but when it comes to diversity of applications and what you can do with the device, I'm afraid right now iOS is hands down way ahead of Android. Okay? Now, for those of you who have Android phones, don't lose heart. Like I said, a lot of what I talked to you about today will be applicable whether it's an iPhone or an Android, or for the one person, a Windows device. Okay? I can see her in the background, and she's like dying in mortification. But anyway, so here's a few tips. Okay, one of the first rules that you need to know, and maybe you know this already, maybe you've already covered it, but it really needs to be said again and again, is when you go out to shoot a photograph, you can hold your iPhone this way, or you can hold your iPhone this way, or frankly, you can hold it any way you want. When you go to shoot video, there's only one way to hold the iPhone, and that is shoot horizontal. Think about the shape of your television, think about the screen that you're going to watch the video on, and remember, start horizontal and stay horizontal, and you will get usable shots all the way through. Okay? The second thing I would say to you is, irrespective of device, these are incredibly clever, they're all super duper automated, but if you can take a little bit of creative control of the camera, you can get better results. It's as simple as that. And what I mean by creative control is understand how to set a focus point in your shot. Understand how to set the exposure, how bright or dark your image is within the actual camera app as well. And this applies for every single one of your cameras, no matter what make your phone is. Because those things will help you to get much better shots than just letting the phone do all the work for you. Okay? Now, something that you may or may not have covered in modules already is how to shoot sequences. Because something that I see with a lot of user-generated content is people take their phone out of their pocket and they start to record and record and record and record and record and record, and then 15 minutes later, when their phone has got no memory left, they stop recording, and then they try to edit it and they can't because there's no space left on the phone. And that, for breaking news, may be viable, but for a journalist who's trying to tell a good visual story, that's a disaster. So what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to break down your story into 3 types of shots. There's loads of others, but just focus on 3. And here's the rule. I'm sure you've all heard about the W's rule, the who, what, when, where, why. You've all heard of this, right? Okay, so think the same way when it comes to framing your shots. Think about, where am I? Because that makes you want to show the scene, and that's a wide shot, okay? Who am I looking at is a mid shot. It's the thing that's going to introduce a person into your story. And what are they doing? That's the action. That's the close-up of whatever they're physically doing with their hands. So a wide shot to establish the scene, a mid shot to establish the human being, the subject of the story, and a close-up shot which gives me the detail of what they're doing with their hands. And one of the things that really, really is interesting is there is a 4th shot in this sequence. And I'd like to ask any of you in the group, what is that 4th shot? Any takers? What's the 4th shot that I would look for? So I've seen the scene, I've seen the person in the mid shot, I've seen a close-up of what they're doing. Any idea what comes next? Say it again.
the camera.
Yeah, so what? A piece to camera? Okay, no, a piece to camera comes a little bit later. What we're looking for is we have the who, we have the what, and we have the where. What I want to know next is how do they feel? How do they feel about what they're doing? Do they love what they're doing? Do they hate what they're doing? Are they bored? Are they tired? Are they happy? How do I know this? How do I know how they feel? Close-up of the face. Yeah, a close-up of the face. Because the face, you know the expression, I'm sure you probably have it in India too, the eyes are the windows to the soul. So the truth about it is that the 4th shot, and it's the one that journalists often forget, is the shot that gives me the emotion of the scene. How does the person feel about what they're doing? So there's 4 shots. Can't count. There's 4 shots that basically will always allow you to tell a story very, very simply, and then The next 6 shots, because every sequence should really be shot in 10, allows you to get really creative. You can shoot over the shoulder, you can do trick shots, shooting point of view, there's loads of different things you can do. But if you always get those key 4 shots to start off any story, you will have some usable pictures to edit. And the thing about journalism, and I'm sure you all know this anyway, is that when it comes to multimedia journalism or online or even TV journalism, speed and integrity are still of the essence. So if you shoot to edit using this technique, you'll be able to edit extremely quickly. Okay? How many are, I'm just kind of curious, how many of you have accessories for your phone? For instance, how many people in the room have a tripod that they can use with their phone? Show of hands. Nobody. Nobody. 1. Okay, just to be clear, if you have a tripod that you use with a stills camera, a photographic camera, that same tripod will work just fine for your phone as long as you have some sort of holder, okay? So, just to give you an example, because I just happen to have some here on the table beside me, because I was just doing this with Al Jazeera a minute ago, all these different types of holders basically allow me to put my iPhone or my smartphone onto a tripod. And there's loads of them, and they range in price from around, I guess, 29 euros all the way up to 150 or 180 euros. But an investment is something as simple as this, guys. Just a little small holder with a really cheap little tripod. This one is from Joby. This will allow you to get really good static shots. And what I would say to you at the start is, if you've ever worked with a TV cameraman or if you've seen a TV cameraman shoot, you'll know that they use lots of moves. There's loads of pans, there's loads of tilts. They can zoom. You can't zoom on your phone. If you can, bad news. So think like a photographer, not like a TV cameraman. Frame up your shots. Use the rules of composition to actually allow you to actually frame up the shots. And then just roll for 10 seconds each time. Yeah, each time. That will give you really simple but editable content. Yeah. One of the things I've never done with Hangouts before, but I'm going to have a quick look here and see if I can do it. Can I screen share or send you a link? Let's see. Remote desktop. Ooh, looks interesting. Google Drive. YouTube. I can access YouTube and send you a link. Right. Let me see if I can find something on YouTube. Yes, that is me. Just give me a split second, because there's a video here that I want to try and show you. Can you see my YouTube screen?
Yeah. Click on
Okay, I don't know, can you see my YouTube screen here or not?
You're trying to ask him to send it to me.
Can you send it again?
Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what I'll do. I will do it as I'm going to try and go. I'm going to try and. Oh. Yeah, that worked well, didn't it? Not. Okay, forget about it. You know what I'm going to do, Priya?
Yeah.
My phone. I'm going to email you the link on my phone. Is that okay? We'll go old school on this.
We might actually be able to use this. Just give us a second.
It's the same thing.
Okay.
Mic is muted. How to close it?
I think you will have the video and we'll be able to see the playback here, isn't it?
Yeah, you know what? I don't think it's going to stream that good, but you have pretty good internet access at your end, do you?
Looks like.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and email you a link to a story on Vimeo, and then hopefully you guys will get to look at the actual the story.
I'll share it.
Second. Okay, so I'm gonna email this link to you, Priya, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, it's on its way to you this second. Just bear with me. And what I want you to do is, if possible, I want you to try and play this on the screen in front of the group. Okay, it's on its way to you. I've just sent it to you. So have a look at that and see if you can play that on screen.
Have you sent it to this ID? Can you do this as a link in the chat window?
Can I do? Oh, good question. Let's see. Chat. Yeah, apparently there's a chat window where I can send something to you. So here we go. This is the second time ever I've used Google Hangouts. I'm usually a Skype guy, but there you go. You learn something new every day, right? 95273. It's coming, I promise it's coming. Okay, here we go. So 95273-884. 95273-884. Okay. Did you get that?
Yeah.
Okay, have a peek at that. See if it plays on the screen for you.
Yeah, the king of coffees. It's
Yep.
Delivering that design takes executive practice. Elvis has been training 4 hours a day, preparing to represent Ireland at the World Latte Art Championships.
Specifications Japanese girl.
Irish Championships this year.
Distributing from milk. It's a part of the
But the battle to be the world's best barista will be tough. Elvis will be drawn on his design for the World Championships.
It's a secret to go out there. I make the concept.
Elvis is crowned the King of Coffee. The competition gets underway tomorrow. Philip Bromwell, RTV News.
Okay, so what do you think of that, guys? Other than the fact that you all want to run out and have a coffee break. Okay. Any comments or anything you want to say about the shots or the usage of that? Okay, it's actually really quite hard to see it. Priya, if you're close to the mic, can you talk to me?
Yeah.
So what did you think of that piece?
Amazing.
Wow.
Are you watching it again? It sounds like you're watching it a second time. Can you see me again?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you again. Sorry, what did you think of that piece that you just saw? I could hear it, obviously I can't see it. What do you think?
Awesome. The way you had mentioned about the different kinds of shots, like a close-up, setting the field, so we could see an example of that.
Exactly, and that's the purpose of it, okay? So yes, all that was shot on an iPhone. There's one telltale shot where you can actually see the phone in the image when it's reflected in the coffee maker. But that story, it's a little bit light and fluffy. It's not hard news, no one died, but nonetheless, it's a visual story that was interesting. And it was a great example of this idea of basically, using these different shots, the wides, the mids, and the close-ups to tell the story. Now, on the back of that, what we did is, myself and Philip, the guy that shot that, we put together this cheat sheet, and I've just sent you the link to it, which hopefully you'll be able to open and see. You get it right there. I sent it to you in the chat window.
Would you like me to look at it now?
Yes, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
So can you guys all see that cheat sheet now?
Yeah.
Okay, so you see there that there's a selection basically of 12 shots And okay, there's a lot more shots in the story in total, but it just gives you some idea of the variety of the different shots that Philip used to tell that story, okay? And it's quite a good case study for you when you go to actually do a story, whatever it is, to try and break it down into these kind of modules, these individual little shots. Now, would anyone like to guess how many cups of coffee this guy made while Philip was shooting that story?
4, 3,
1, 27, 27. As in 2, 7. 27 cups of coffee were made in the making of that one story. Now, in fairness, he was practicing for a competition, so he didn't mind making lots of coffee. But for all the different angles, to make sure that the continuity and the consistency of the piece worked, he basically just kept making more and more coffee. In fact, I think he drew the geisha about 5 or 6 times in total just for the shoot. So one of the other myths is this idea that you will always get the best shots just by observing. There are 2 different ways to shoot with your smartphone. In fact, there are 2 different ways to shoot with any camera. You either shoot as an independent observer, just capturing the action as it happens, and for breaking news, that's pretty much the way you have to shoot. But then the other type of shooting is the shoot where you take control of the scene, you form a relationship with the subject, and you talk them through the process. So they will help you, and they will redo things for you several times so you can get the right angles. And one of the great things about the iPhone in particular is, or the Samsung, is that you can show the person the clips afterwards to explain the logic of what you're doing. You can kind of bring them with you on the journey rather than sitting there going, if he asks me to do that again, I'm just going to hit him. Yeah? So that's one of the examples of the type of stories that RT has done. Now, the other stuff that we've gotten quite interested in since we started the project is this idea of how do we diversify the way that we tell a story outside the traditional news style package. And what we've been looking at is apps that allow us to use some of the content that we've already shot but that never made the TV edit. Yeah? So I don't know if this will work, but we shall see. Again, it's all very exciting. Control room, capture. Let me see if I can actually put my phone on your screen. So Google Hangouts, unknown device. Okay, let's see if this works. Can you see my phone?
Yes.
Why does it not fit on my screen properly? Because I'm holding it vertically, probably. There is an app that we use called Storehouse. Have any of you heard of it?
Yes.
You have. So you've actually used Storehouse already yourselves.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So in that case, there's no need for me to really show it to you. But I guess one of the things that I should talk to you about is how we have used it. I don't know why Meeting Penny has popped up there and there. Lovely pic. But let me just find my stories. So yeah, here's an example of one of the actual stories that I did with Storehouse. Is my phone cut off on your screen?
No.
You can see my whole phone.
It's fine, it's fine.
Okay, that's fine. So I did a story about this guy his name is Brendan O'Shea, and he's a photographer, but he shoots with the iPhone. And the whole idea of this was to see how I could work with Storehouse. So we used, I did a shoot with them on over 2 days down in Cork in Ireland. And the idea again was to break it down into sequences. So have a little snippet here. It's just buffering right now on the hotel Wi-Fi, but hopefully this will play for you. You're probably not hearing anything.
Yes, we can't hear you.
Silent.
Ah, okay. Well, there is sound. You just it's not going through. That's a shame. Oh well. Okay. Again, it's just a sequence. You'll see him with the close-ups and everything, taking his photograph, and yeah, you'll see. Great. That's it. First clip. Okay, and then I kind of mixed it up with some photographs and some more video clips, all just to look at different ways to tell this story, other than the piece that I actually did, if you like, for TV, which was a 5-minute edit. I'm just going to stop that screen sharing then. If I can get back into Hangouts. So stop screen sharing. Great. So just to give you an example of what you can achieve, have any of you edited on your phones?
Yeah.
Not video.
Yeah. Not video, but photographs. Okay, well that's good to know. Well, look, what I'm going to share with you now is when I did that iPhoneographer piece, I deliberately set out to try and push the boundaries, if you like, on what I could do just on the phone. So I had a lot of, we had a situation where some of our camera crews came on my course, and they really were opposed to the idea of using the iPhone for editing. So what I decided to do was to see, could I actually edit a story on the phone and make it so that people wouldn't know that that's how it was done. So I'm going to send you a link now, if I can get the link. Yeah, so this is the finished story. Here it comes. And what I did is I actually captured the timeline on the phone, which I'm now sending to you as well. So you could actually see the edit in iMovie and see exactly how I did it. Now,
which one would you like me to play first? The first or second?
So you can just play the lower one, the one that's 890-99605. Can you see that one, Priya?
Yeah, yeah.
You needn't play it all, just the first minute or two is fine.
I'm Glen Mulcahy, taking photographs of the airport of 2012. When I'm outside, walking around the very sensitive to the opposite of the photo opportunity to framing and the scenes as I go. What I like to do is get even movement shots. I tend to go shooting my regular DSLR camera, I take the iPhone with me, and I use the iPhone once more than the DSLR. So it's more enjoyable, it's more to pass it on the phone, if you get something worse than like that. And the things that inspire me, I suppose, that the main again, photography is a frustrated painter and I can't draw to any degree of efficiency, and that I find that photography allows me to express the creativity that I have and have.
Okay, that's probably enough, Priya.
It is a kind of teacher trainer in University of Glasgow. So I'm starting to talk about
Close?
That's probably enough. You can kill it, yeah.
And then
Yeah, will I play the second link now?
Okay, no, you needn't play the second link. What I've actually just sent to you now, just to move on, really more than anything else, what I wanted to show you is that you can do a certain amount on the device. So again, if you use the principles we've talked about when you shoot, you can actually edit to a pretty high standard on the phone. And I mean, we've had stories that were actually edited on the phone, broadcast, no problem. So it's perfect for online, and if you shoot properly, it can be used for TV, no issue. But obviously, it helps if you have some accessories. So what I've done is I've just sent you 3 thing links, which, you know, maybe you're already aware of my blog, and if you're not, I've just sent you the link for that as well. But these thing links, I tweet them regularly, and they're also available there. And these give you some idea of some of the accessories that you can get. If you want to pop those up on screen, Priya,
Yeah.
I'll screen share them if you want. Do you want me to screen share it and see if it works?
Sure.
Okay, let's try this. Screen share.
Get back to the
Yeah, he wants
Get
to
back.
screen share.
Get back to the screen sharing.
What do you want me to
Okay.
back to the
Back to the
Can you see that graphic that I have on screen, Priya?
Yeah.
Okay, so this thing link, if you can see it, it's the list of all the apps that I've kind of tested and used and that I recommend to our journalists. And it's interactive in the sense that if you download it and you have it on your phone or if you have it on your computer, when you go over one of the apps, obviously it will allow you to download the app directly. It links you straight into iTunes, okay? And in here there are apps to shoot video, there are apps for stabilizing video, there are apps for putting text on top of video, there are photography apps, there's time-lapse apps. There's pretty much everything that you need from the camera side. There's audio editing applications which you might find useful. There's video editing applications, video grading applications, and then some of the immersive visual storytelling apps like Storehouse and Stellar and some of those as well. So hopefully that list will be of some use to you as you're doing your project in the next couple of days. And the other thing links that I have, which if it pops up, and I will know in a second, will it? Screen sharing. Oh, it's gone again, is it? Is this one. So these are just some of the accessories. And just to go through these, guys, the things I would strongly recommend are, do get some sort of a budget tripod, something to just try and keep your phone steady. I mean, the cheapest one possible is this little Joby grip tight stand. For audio, it is really, really important to actually use some sort of an external microphone for interviews. But for sequences, you can just shoot with the native camera mic. It's fine. One little thing about the native camera mic, by the way, is that you probably know, but on the phone itself, the microphone at the end of the phone, near the home button, that microphone is the one that's used when you're doing audio-only recordings. But when you shoot video, it's the microphone directly beside the lens that's used. There's a little tiny pinhole microphone right there beside the lens. So just know that that's the interview mic. So if you're a distance away from someone, the sound is going to be awful. But what you can do is you can plug your headphones in and use the little inline microphone that comes with your headphones to put onto your guest to try and improve the sound. So there's loads of little tricks to try and improve the quality of what you shoot. So, what did you hope to get out of today? What were you hoping to get? No one knows. Any ideas? What did you want? Did you want me to assign you a task? Did you want to just talk in general about the development of mobile journalism? Do you want me to just keep bombarding you with links about applications and videos? What would you like me to do?
Talk about the journalism.
Yeah, what exactly is the scope?
Okay, so the audio from your end is quite difficult to hear. So someone close to the camera, if you can repeat any of the questions, then I might hear it. So go again.
They want you to talk about the journalism scene as far as mobile technology goes.
Okay, yeah. Well, the first thing I would say to you is, I've been doing this for 4 years basically, but in the last 12 months, it's become more mainstream than ever before. And a big part of that mainstream stuff has been driven by live streaming. The ability to use Wi-Fi or 3G or 4G to live stream video from the scene. And companies like Sky News in particular, to give them credit, but also BBC, NRK, and some of the others are all now using mobile devices with their journalists in the field to provide live video to their TV networks, to online, and live audio to their radio networks. And that's all being driven purely by the connectivity of these devices. So it really helps if you have one of these, and Bamboozer, for instance, I think is available on Android and iOS. So it's worth installing those apps and getting used to how to use them at very, very short notice. So if you're at a scene where there's breaking news, you can stream live video, basically, rather than record, edit, and try and send minutes after it's happened. The other thing I would say is I've been on, I've kind of lost count of the amount of panels and conferences I've done this year, but there's a lot of interest, particularly across the European Broadcasting Union, with TV networks who want to try and empower all of their journalists as visual storytellers, because in a traditional news network, the cameraman has his or her job, the journalist has their job, the producer has their job, and it's all very compartmentalized. But in the modern newsroom, every journalist should be able to tell a story visually. And they shouldn't necessarily depend on having a camera person with them to be able to do that. So a lot of newsrooms, this is part of the strategy that RTE adopted, is trying to train and empower the journalists to be able to tell visual stories themselves. And I'm sure you're all probably extremely literate on social media, but using things like Twitter cards, using Instagram video, using Vine, all these to share short-form video clips is becoming quite popular. We're describing it in RT as being akin to fishing for your audience. Yeah, it's like you send this little small snippet of your video out into the ether, and the hope is that you can tag it with a URL to drag the audience back to your website to see either the article or the story. So it is becoming slowly more accepted in the broadcast environment, but in the print industry and in the radio industry, it's been welcomed with open arms. And a huge part of that, I think, is driven by the fact that those industries don't have a lot of money. So this is seen as a very cost-effective way or cost-efficient way of getting their journalists to produce content, but without spending lots and lots of cash. So I've done training, for instance, with the Irish Times in Ireland, and they've done an interesting thing, which is that they have a video journalism team that use traditional broadcast cameras, and then they have trained probably about 40 or 50 of their core journalists as well to shoot with iPhones. So they're doing it as a two-prong approach rather than putting all the eggs in one basket.
Glenn, I have a question of my own. Have you ever grappled with connectivity issues? Because our students are going to be out tomorrow on the pop-up and day after again live streaming an event. They do not have Wi-Fi connectivity there.
Okay.
Have you dealt with any situation like that? Any workaround?
Sorry, say that again, Priya. Sorry, just cancelling a call. Say that again.
Have you come across any workarounds for issues like that? Because on a 3G, which is pretty slow in India, it's not as fast as it's in Ireland. So
Right, okay.
it's going to be difficult to use bamboos or any of those things because it might stall in between and the quality of the video is compromised. So
Okay. Yeah, so, well, only really one tip, but one or two of the manufacturers that make those apps have built in a feature called cellular bonding. And cellular bonding means that as opposed to just depending on your connectivity with your device to the network, you can use a little portable battery-powered wireless device like a Wi-Fi, and it will allow you to bond the two of those connections together to try and give you more bandwidth. So even if you have relatively poor throughput on your connection in India, it may be possible to bond a Wi-Fi device with your phone to double the capacity that you potentially have going into the network. It's something that you'll have to experiment with yourself. One tip I would give you, though, is there is a free application called speedtest.net. It's also a free website, and that will measure your bandwidth connection, your upload speed and your download speed. And if ever you intend to live stream, or even if you're sending your story back via 3G, not Wi-Fi, it's worth checking the actual connectivity speed on speedtest.net before you send. That way you'll have some indication of how long it's likely to take.
Glenn, is it okay if the students come down here to the mic and ask you questions from here on?
Absolutely, that's fine. Yeah, no problem at
all. How far are we away from virtual reality being the go-to tool for becoming telling stories?
How far away are we from virtual reality? Is that what you said?
Yes, Oculus VR.
I think it's going to be really interesting. I think a lot of organizations are probably a bit sore after the amount of money that they spent on 3D. Some TV networks spent millions upon millions converting their newsrooms, converting their sports coverage to 3D, and then very quickly the audience got a bit tired of it, or maybe they got a bit sore of it with their eyes. But ultimately, 3D has not been the success that all the manufacturers would have led the TV stations to believe. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the audience responds to this idea of immersive viewing with a headset. I think your generation, and you're probably half my age, so I say that with a certain sense of jealousy probably, but your generation will probably be far more welcoming of the idea of actually physically putting on a device on your head to allow you to become immersed in a scene. I think the biggest challenge, though, is creating content which is suitable for those devices. And also, in many ways, storytelling and the way that you construct a story is going to need to be reinvented as well. Because we've traditionally had a frame through which you look into the world, but now that frame is 360 degrees around your head, and it can move depending on where you look. So the way that we tell stories is probably going to have to be reinvented again. I'm interested in Oculus Rift. I literally got one in the post just before I left to come out here to Al Jazeera, so I haven't had time to play with it. But I also got a Duroviz Dive and a couple of the other ones that allow you to just clip your iPhone or your Samsung device into the front of them and use the actual smartphone as the actual screen, which is, the poor man's version of the Oculus. And I mean, the experience I found is actually really impressive, but the problem is the amount of content available is still really poor. But inversely, running at the same time as this move towards virtual reality, I think what also is very interesting is there are probably about 8 or 9 360-degree video cameras coming on the market. The first one, I just got a tweet from them yesterday to say that they'll be shipping the gyroptic 360-degree camera by Christmas. So that will allow me to record 360-degree video, and that means that I can then use a 360-degree immersive headset to experience that video and to look around the scene. And you know, for big events, you know, I guess for riots or maybe for a rock concert or whatever. Oh, I'm showing my age. For a pop concert even, it might be good to experience it in that sort of 360-degree space. But could I see my mother, who's 69, putting on a headset to experience a scene? Well, let me put it like this. I was traveling recently enough, and they got Wi-Fi in their house, and I had set up Skype on their iPad at the house, and I did the Skype video call, and she kept walking around behind the iPad to see how I was getting the video signal in. So I think, you know, yeah. So no, I can't see her putting a headset on to absorb a scene. But I think your generation, who, and even younger than you, I think will probably just accept this as perfectly normal and nothing particularly special. But I think the whole key to its success is going to be on the quality of the content, and if we can reinvent the way that you can tell stories with these. Just as a tiny sideline, I don't know if you know Dan Fung Dennis, but Dan Fung Dennis is a guy, he won several awards for a documentary he did called To Hell and Back Again, which was shot in Afghanistan. But he, since he finished that documentary, has put all his money and energy into a project called Condition 1. And literally in the last week, they've released their first 360-degree immersive movie, which is designed for the Oculus Rift. So if this is something that you're specifically interested in, then have a look at Condition 1 and see if you can get access to the video. I think you can buy it on iTunes or something. It's not that expensive, like 10 euros. But if you have Oculus Rift, it would allow you to actually experience it and give you some insight into how this could evolve. Hope that answered the question. Any other questions?
Okay, so India being a developing country, what do you think are the challenges countries like India or China would be facing with regard to mobile journalism?
Okay, so I missed the start of it, so just say the start again.
Well, with regard to, like, I'm interested in knowing, like, with regard to developing countries, what kind of challenges countries like India and China would be facing with regard to adopting the mobile journalism, like technology-wise and all those things? Okay,
so I guess two things. For emerging economies, something like an iPhone is probably seen like a Mercedes-Benz because of the cost. Like this phone, which is the 6 Plus, 128 gigs, was €1,000. And you know, I meet colleagues and I train people from various different countries. I meet people from Eastern Europe who, when I say this, they basically say, well, you know, that's like a 3-month salary for us, so no, we're not going to buy an iPhone. Okay, so that's one of the biggest challenges, that the costs are prohibitive for emerging economies. This is why Samsung devices and some of the Android phones are much preferred in emerging economies, because their entry point into the market is much cheaper. Again, just to go back to the point I said at the start, the principles that we talked about, holding it horizontal, taking control of the camera, thinking in sequences, they're universal. You can use that with a DSLR, iPhone, Samsung, or some bizarre cheap Korean make that no one's ever heard of, but the principles are the same. But the biggest issue that I think you face is connectivity. It goes back to the point that Priya just made. How do you send your finished video file? How do you connect to the network so that you can stay engaged and so you can keep across the social web? And then how do you live stream? Because live streaming for me is probably going to be the next big thing from mobile. The infrastructure is going to be your biggest challenge. And there's no quick fix for that. No one has come up with an alternative to the mobile network that is cost efficient and pervasive enough to be a real alternative. So I think ultimately the speed with which you can respond to stories will be compromised by the lack of infrastructure. But that's not to say you can't put your energy into well-told, slightly longer form stories which have a much better shelf life and which can afford to take a bit of time to create. And just on a small sideline, I was at a session at IBC with Dan Chung. I don't know if you know this guy. He runs a website called News Shooter, and we were talking about the future of journalism and, you know, what would I say to a journalist in college who wants to get into television? That was the question he asked me. Would anyone like to take a stab at the answer that I gave him?
Don't go.
Yeah, take up gardening. Right? And he was horrified when I said take up gardening. It kind of said, what are you saying, that there's no career in journalism? And I said, no, it's not the journalism bit that I think would be a bad idea. I think the bad idea would be predicating your entire career on the idea that television is where you want to go. Now, I work in a TV station. I've worked in a TV station for 16 years, okay? But what I see, and what I can see happening as we continue on the same technological path, is that linear television is going to become slowly obsolete over the next 10 to 15 years. Like, people will not sit down and watch something that happens at 6 o'clock on the TV. It's already slowly dying, but none of the TV stations will put their hands up and say that. So what's actually going to happen is, in my humble opinion, is that journalists will kind of start to develop a brand, a personal brand. And that personal brand will be derived from three things. One, your integrity as a journalist, your ability to basically, be as impartial as possible and tell a balanced story. That's very important. That's what sets you apart from user-generated content. The second thing, though, is your accessibility, your availability, and you're willing to engage and share with the audience. Because the process of telling stories is no longer linear. We're not feeding the masses anymore. We're now talking to the massive, and they create content too, and they engage with you if you're willing to listen and discuss. And then the third thing is, find something that you're good at, something that you're passionate about, something that floats your boat, something that you can become a specialist in. And tell stories about that topic, because people who are interested in that topic, and remember, it's not a local market anymore. You're not depending on the reach of a local newspaper. This is the internet. You have a global audience. So people who are interested in that niche or interested in that topic or that subject, they will gravitate towards you as long as you're a good storyteller. So you can become a personal brand in your own right if you learn how to tell good visual stories, and you don't necessarily need to work for a TV company anymore or work for a radio station even anymore. Perhaps being freelance is the next big thing. Perhaps that's the most desirable thing and not seen as the kind of the poor man's answer to working in the industry. For me, I'm teetering on the edge of actually deciding, will I go freelance or not? Don't tell RT I said that. But that's the truth. The freedom to actually teach people these skills and empower them as storytellers in their own right is something that is really, really attractive to me. What has blown me away over the last 3 or 4 years is empowering people who'd never literally shot a single frame or a single second of video before, doing a 10-day course with them, and then looking at their excitement and their energy and their enthusiasm when they realize that they have these skills. They don't need a camera person. They don't need a €100,000 edit suite anymore. They have these skills, and they have the device in their pocket.
So, whereas that quality of journalism applications on Android and Apple, there's a huge difference between the applications that are provided on the Apple Store and on Android. So, why is there such a difference? And with Android being a more openly customizable platform instead of Apple, why is there still such a huge difference in applications, the quality of applications on Android?
Okay. It's a good question. It's a question that I usually deal with by about slide 6 of my workshops, so that I can actually explain to the people in the audience who feel disenfranchised from the beginning, i.e. the Android users, why it is the way it is. So let me give you this example, okay? Of the Android users in the audience, how many people have a Samsung device in their pocket? Show of hands, please. 3. 4.5. Not sure about that. Okay, yeah, 4. So at the start when I asked you, there was probably 20-odd people put their hands up to say they had Android devices, but of that, 4 people have a Samsung device. How many people have a Sony, HTC,
Motorola.
Motorola, okay, Motorola. How many people have those devices?
Nexus.
3. Google Nexus? Okay, so how many? Oh, loads of Google Nexus users. Okay, well, jobs in Google are beckoning then, potentially. Okay, the point about it is that Android, because it is an open platform and because it's effectively available to every manufacturer who wants it, pretty much just under almost a free license, you have these big brand manufacturers like the ones that we've spoken about, but you have these obscure, small Chinese, Korean, brands that no one knows of, that use very, very poor cameras, that use very small chips, but they're still Android phones. And if I'm an app developer and I'm trying to actually develop the next super duper best video camera app ever on the planet for Android, here's my problem. I'll put tons of development work in, a team of 5 or 6 developers, maybe working for 8 months, maybe a year trying to develop this app. It will cost me, just think base salaries. These guys are valuable assets. They're going to be paid $50,000 or $60,000 a year as coders. So that's maybe 253,000 euros that it's going to cost me just for the development team, let alone marketing and all the other stuff that's going to go into it. Now here's my problem. As soon as I launch that on the Google Play Store, everyone decides, oh my God, I'm a journalist, I have to have this camera app, and they all download it on their Android devices. So the Samsung devices get it, the LG devices get it, the Sony, the Google Nexus, they all get it, and then all the other millions upon millions of devices that are made by brands we've never heard of all try and download the app. And yet it only runs on 15% of those devices. Why? Because it's designed for a high specification camera, it's designed for a fast chip, it's designed for something that has a good lot of storage, and it's designed for a particular flavor of Android. Because remember, people can customize Android for their system. What happens to the other 75% or 80% of people who downloaded it? They go apoplectic because they have an app that doesn't work on their phone that all their friends are raving about. And I now know that in truth, I don't have the entire Android market available to me. I just have that niche part of the Android market where people have invested in the high-end phones. Okay, so that's the biggest challenge. This entire problem within the Android ecosystem, it's called fragmentation, and there's a really interesting report from a company called OpenSignal. I'll try and search for it now to send it to you. But the OpenSignal report recently showed that there were 18,000 different Android devices on the market. 18,000 different devices. They can't all be Samsung. In fact, they're most certainly not all Samsung. Only about 20% of the whole marketplace is Samsung. But they are the biggest manufacturer, and now I'm hearing back from app developers that they're starting to design apps specifically for Samsung and high-end devices. And it will say, when you get the description on the App Store, it will actually say, designed for specific models. You know, so they're aiming at that higher niche market. And I think slowly you will see Android will catch up with iOS. But the beauty of iOS has been, once you develop for the platform, you only have to choose between 3 or 4 different models to be compatible with, versus 18,000 different models. And once you know that it will run on iOS 5, 6, 7, 8, and you know it will run on iPhone 4S, 5, 5S, 6, you now have the entire 18% of the iOS market available to you in one fell swoop. So they're actually, market share-wise, extremely close, even though Android has 81% of the global market. The actual high-end smartphone market is almost exactly the same as the iOS market. And I'll try and pull up the report for you now, but I hope that answers your question. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hi. There's a small question. It may not be very relevant or not. Many people might have thought about it, but it was so difficult for me to think of it that I almost typed it down. Do you think with the advent of smartphones, are we so much connected to the net and to the world, we are unearthing facts from everywhere? And now has it happened so much that our screen time has increased to a lot extent? And has it in some way disconnected us with the real world around us?
Ooh. Okay, so you need to talk to your colleague who wants to know if people are putting on headsets that allow you to do immersive video are kind of, you know, losing touch with the world. Oh no, seriously though, actually, I think that's actually a very valid question. I do think we're getting to a very, very strange situation where people start to experience the world through their device rather than what's actually going on around them. I find it amazing when I go to a conference or I go to a concert and everyone is there with their phone up and they're recording it, and they're not actually taking in the atmosphere, they're not engaging with the people around them, they're just glued to their phone trying to get that great shot, you know. So yeah, I think there's some merit in it, but I'm afraid if you think the way we are with mobiles right now is bad, what happens when wearables come on stream? What happens if Google Glass becomes ubiquitous? What happens if you're walking down the street, you're wearing Google Glass, and this thing is constantly going, bing! There's Mary. Mary is a friend of your friend from college on Facebook. Would you like me to introduce you? This is going to happen, guys. This is, mark my words, this is going to happen. We're going to have, and I mean, you won't look like as much of an idiot as you do when you're wearing Google Glass. You know, I haven't worn mine in public because I'm worried someone's going to hit me a punch. You really do look like a bit of a fool when you're wearing this thing, but they will become much more discreet. They look like a pair of traditional Ray-Bans, and yet it will still have a camera and it will have a display, and you'll be like, you're feeling like, what's his name? Iron Man. You know, heads-up display and lots of information coming up on screen. But you know, this is ahead of us, and it's a very real world. I mean, you know, it may seem a distance away right now, but if you just look at the money that Google is investing right now in artificial intelligence, in robotics, like Google Glass is the tip of the iceberg. They've got an awful lot more stuff cooking under the lid. So I'm not too sure we're going to get away from it. I will tell you this as a concession. I'm fairly active on Twitter. Like you know, if you tweet me, you'll probably get me an awful lot faster than you will if you email me. And my wife, God bless her, you know, the ever-suffering woman, she tries regularly to put a rule that when I come home to the house, I must put the phone down and have at least a half-hour conversation with her. And when she said it to me, I kind of went, do I not talk to you anymore? And she went, no, it's the bloody phone. Always the phone. And when she said it, I kind of went, actually, she's probably right. I've become so engrossed in these conversations with, you know, 3 friends in the States, 2 friends somewhere in Europe, someone in the UK, all going on Twitter or whatever, that I've become engrossed in that little bubble, and I've stopped conversing with people around me. So there is probably a need for some of you guys, the next generation, to develop an app that has a little timer. We'll call it HyperNag. And what it does is it measures how long you're on the internet, and then it pops up a little warning going, okay, you super geek, it's time to put the phone down and enjoy the real world. You'd probably make $1 million. Any other questions? I've just sent you that link. I don't know if it's popped up on screen, but the Open Signal report from Android fragmentation, I've actually just sent it to you as a link there, and I'll pop it up on screen share right now if you want, just so you can have a quick peek at it. But it is really interesting. There's quite a lot of statistics in there. But the thing that really I think is most impressive is if you scroll down, I hope my wife, there it is. See this graphic? Can you see this graphic?
Yeah.
That graphic shows you all the different devices on the Android platform. And if you look at it, in the top left corner are all the big devices, you know, the Galaxy S3 and blah, 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 blah. But down the bottom right, look at the amount of tiny, obscure manufacturers and models that you've never even heard of. It is impossible for me to design an application that is guaranteed to run on every one of those devices on the screen. And that's Android's biggest problem. But one little tiny tip that I would say, just to come back to it briefly, Android are aware of this. Google are implicitly aware of this. And they're working on a version of Android. I don't know what the code name for it is. Let's just, for argument's sake, call it Android Pure. And Android Pure, or Android One, or whatever they call it, will be based on a very clean version of Android, which will be targeted specifically at high-end smartphones. And it will become the true rival for iOS. So mark my words, 12 months' time, if we do this chat again, Android will probably have managed to tip the balance a bit in their favor when it comes to the smartphone journalism model. Any other questions, guys? Are any of you into 360-degree photography? Do you use that as part of the course? Any of that stuff, yeah? Hyperlapse, are you all out hyperlapsing all around yourselves?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yes, sir, I have one small question. Like mobiles being very small and accessible, they are generally seen as less intrusive. So do you see an upshot in investigative journalism as a result of this? Another concern being, will privacy issues become like more prevalent with mobile journalism dominating the scene?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting question. And actually, you know, to give you the first line, when I started training our journalists on mobiles for content production, I got a knee-jerk reaction from everyone going, how am I going to get credibility when I turn up to interview a government minister and I take my iPhone out of my pocket? Yeah, and I kind of went, yeah, so I know you're going to have this big deal about it's too small, it's not serious, they won't take me serious. The opposite has happened. To my amazement, to my shock, to my surprise, the opposite has happened. What happens when you take out the iPhone kit that we use, and I'm sure you may have seen it on the blog, I think I tweeted it at your last event. What happens is people go, is that an iPhone? And you go, yes it is. And they go, but what's that? And what's that? And what's that? And what's that? And you end up having a conversation with them going, well, this is our tripod holder, and this is our microphone, and this is our little light, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like they don't feel intimidated. they feel intrigued, and actually in some ways the conversations often culminate with them saying, will you send me a list of the gadgets that you have? I want to buy them so I can try this myself. So actually, mobile journalism is by virtue of the fact that it's relatively cheap and it's not intimidating at all. It's becoming a more accessible way to create some stories. And I had a very interesting case study at a conference with the EBU recently, where another mobile journalism trainer talked about a Muslim community that he had been shooting in and training staff in, and they would not allow them to film with traditional VJ cameras, okay? But some of the journalists went in with iPhones, and they were able to get interviews and access that they otherwise would never have. And it was seen as non-intrusive, no big deal, it's fine. So there is certainly an argument that says that these give you a certain level of access above and beyond what the traditional ENG cameras or the VJ cameras can do. Now, to answer the second part of your question about the privacy stuff, I think recording video with your smartphone, it's quite hard to make it discreet. Okay, so if I point this camera at you, the chances are you're going to go, he's either taking a photograph or he's recording a video, right? Either that or he's just obsessed in a movie and just hiding behind his phone. But you can see it fairly clearly. The biggest privacy issues come with things like Google Glass, where they don't have a tally light. There's no little red light to say it's recording. So you never know if I'm recording a video of you or I'm taking a photograph of you. And it's things like that that are really ramping up the privacy issues. But I'm just going to show you one tiny little accessory here, which is quite controversial. And I've forgotten the name of it, which is great, isn't it? But let me see if I can pull it up. This little tiny device I have in my hand, which is in its case right now, this is a lens system, okay? And what it can do, if I have, did I take the phone out of my pocket? Yeah, just give me a split second. So here's the deal. Here's my iPhone 5, and watch what I'm going to do. Okay, so I've attached the lens onto the front of my iPhone 5. I hope you can all see that, okay, yeah? Now, here's the deal. That lens allows me to shoot like this. Okay, so even though if you're looking at me right now, it would look like I'm either playing a game or reading a text or whatever it is on my phone, but in fact this lens is pointing at you. So I could record someone covertly with this little tiny lens attached to my phone, and I mean it's not expensive. This thing was maybe $200 or something like that. The point about it is it would allow me to record subversively, if you like, yeah? So even the way I hold the phone, if I hold it like this, you probably wouldn't even notice in public if I was walking around shooting it like this. And there was a great experiment on YouTube with a guy who basically put a phone behind a mirror and just scratched out enough for the lens to see through the mirror, then put the mirror in various different places just to catch the interesting reaction from members of the public who were there kind of going... I think that clip is on YouTube somewhere. If you go looking for it, you can have a look. But yeah, so I think the privacy thing is going to become the next big debate. I think more and more devices have cameras and tracking in it. But inversely, I would say to you like this: you know the expression about your smartphone knows you better than your partner? You know this? Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, Google, if you have any of the Google apps on your phone, they track every single location that you've been, and that's available on the internet. Every single website that you've ever visited, that's available on the internet. Every single thing that you've ever purchased via Amazon or eBay, that's available on the internet. I mean, this thing knows everything that you do. Literally everything that you do. So when people start to get excited about privacy issues and cameras, I tend to remind them actually, well, you know, I could probably go on social media for the next 2 minutes and I could probably tell you more about you than you would probably reveal to the average member of the public. In fact, there's a great video clip for that as well, if I can find it. So yeah, I don't know. Privacy is going to be a big hot topic. I think the privacy people are going to keep introducing laws. I think Google and others are going to keep ignoring them. They'll get wrapped on the wrist. They'll take one step back and they'll step forward again. But I'm afraid your privacy is, to all intents and purposes, gone. Any other questions, guys?
So you were talking about artificial intelligence. So I learned from my professors that there are certain applications that report news by itself. So how far do you think that artificial intelligence will impact journalism?
Okay, I literally heard like 2 words of that. Can you just say it again slowly for me?
No, my professors taught me that so there are some artificial intelligence apps which enables it to report itself by itself, certain machines, algorithms. So, how far do you think artificial intelligence will impact journalism? Will it deem us useless?
To be honest with you, I don't. You know, you probably have heard of Elon Musk, the guy who's behind Tesla and SpaceX and all those interesting companies. He did a very controversial post recently where he talked about artificial intelligence as being like, you know, the biggest can of worms that mankind is ever going to do. And, you know, science fiction has been playing and toying with this topic of what happens when the machines become more intelligent than mankind. I really don't know. I think it's a huge dark area. I mean, I think, you know, we've gotten to the point that we're extremely reliant on these devices to do simple tasks for us. But when they become physically active, and there's been a lot of research on, again, Google are behind this 100%, but when these become devices that can not only do computational stuff for us, but can actually physically interact for us as well, then we're starting to get into the extremely dangerous territory that's been foretold by a lot of the utopian sort of films. Could these devices become self-aware? Could these devices join a network and effectively work together as a cloud? We've created the technology to make that happen already. So, you know, it's an exciting space, but it's also one that really needs to be very carefully kind of managed and very carefully controlled by policy and regulation, because there are guys out there who are so completely caught up with the idea of doing better than the other research teams that they're fighting against that they're not really grounded in the idea of the long-term potential benefit or impact of what they do. And I'm for one, maybe it's my age, I'm just over 40, but I'm petrified what my 2-year-old is going to go into when she gets to 20 years of age. That's the truth.
Glenn, just a couple of last questions, I think. I'm just asking this on behalf of a student. She wants to know if there are any infographic apps for the mobile phone.
Yeah, not that I'm really aware of, actually. I know quite a few websites, okay, but I'm not aware of anyone that's app-enabled specifically. I mean, maybe some of these ones will work as web apps. They could have a trawl for you. Not something I do very much of, Priya, if I tell you the absolute truth.
I think he does, by the way, so that's one thing. And in a conversation we had earlier, you'd said you had a Google Glass. Any
Yes.
chance to put it on you now?
I don't have it with me, I'm afraid. It's back at my office in Dublin.
So perhaps if you'll join us another time, I think we decided that you might be able to show them a demo of how it works and things like that. So it completely slipped my mind when I arranged to talk to you today. So.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I can tell you how it works, and I can tell you about its functionality, its pros and cons, because I've used it quite extensively at this stage. I just can't physically put it on me to show it to you, but I'm sure you've probably all seen photographs of what it looks like, though.
You were underwhelmed by it. You weren't very impressed by it, the Google Glass.
I wasn't impressed by it for a couple of reasons. There's a few things about it that are extremely helpful and useful, and that could effectively be the features that will develop the wearable headset market further. But there were parts about it that I really did not like. The biggest thing I hated about it is the fact that Google are charging €1,500 to basically get one. Because actually, when you compare that to what you can do with an iPhone, I could basically buy 2 iPhones for the same money, then it's an absolute gross waste of money. That's the truth. But the features that I like about it, the most powerful parts of it that will get better with time are, number one, the ability to record a video clip hands-free is useful. I've been using it for choosing tutorials on my blog so I can actually physically do things while recording a point-of-view shot. It's not image stabilized. It's as shaky as hell. It's like early iPhone 4 type footage, but it is what it is. It will get better. The cameras have gotten better since the Google prototype was launched. They just haven't updated it fast enough. It can stream live to the internet directly from the headset. For me, that's a huge thing. If you think about what CNN potentially could do with this, given their iReport program, imagine you're walking down the street, you see a car crash, you're wearing Google Glass, and you say the words, "OK, Glass live stream," you're live on the internet. That's it. 4 words, you're live on the internet, and any news agency using social media curation is going to find that link, and they're going to have it on their news or on their website in a matter of minutes. So that's huge. but it's also, it goes back to that privacy issue, you know. I mean, it literally means there are cameras everywhere that are always on and always looking at what you're looking at. The real-time translation is pretty cool. So Google bought an app called Word Lens, which was actually very successful on iOS before they bought it. And basically what it means is if you look at a foreign language, and I think it supports like French, Russian, Italian, Spanish, some of the big languages anyway, once you look at it, it will literally change the image into an English or translate into any other language in real time. So if you look at a menu, when you look at the menu through Google Glass, it will literally, before your eyes, translate the visual menu from whatever language it's in into English. That's pretty cool because you're not looking like an idiot trying to go Google Translate in your phone, trying to translate word for word or whatever. So those are some of the benefits. The stuff that scares the life out of me, though, is the idea that there's a back-facing camera that's tracking your eyeball. Google said it's not tracking your eyeball, and everyone went, well, then how does it take a photograph when you wink? And I was like, So yes, it does track your eyeball, which means they potentially have a camera that tracks where I'm looking, and they have a camera that shows what I'm looking at, which from an advertising point of view is an absolute goldmine. Everything that I look at, everything that catches my attention is effectively now part of a database that Google have on my behavior. Can you imagine how much that database would be worth to someone like, Amazon, eBay? So that stuff is kind of scary. So yeah, there's pros and cons, and I think it is a long way to go before it will actually have a full public release. To be honest with you, if you looked at the Google I/O conference this year, Glass had dropped way down the list of exciting developments. In fact, Google Cardboard, I think, completely displaced Glass this year. So I think they've taken their foot off their accelerator a little bit, and they're waiting to see what the next iteration will be. But if you want to see a potential future for these wearables, have a look for Meta space glasses. Google Meta Space Glass, and have a look at what these guys are working on, because that stuff that's the future, and it's also scary as hell, but that has got an awful lot more functionality than what Glass has got built into it.
So you regret buying that then? 1,000
well, it wasn't out of my personal budget, Priya, thankfully. It came from the research and development fund that we have in RTE. But I have to put money into that fund by training. So basically, I do the training, people pay for the training, it goes into my research fund, and then I can spend it on gear. So I'm glad that I got to test it. I'm glad that I got to make a first-hand judgment on its potential. I think it could be interesting to put it on the headset of one of our big TV talents when he's on the radio to see the world through his eyes in the studio, but do I see it as something that everyone would want to wear every day? Well, personally, my answer to that would be no. But if it becomes, like, as they're planning, Dion Furstenberg sexed up or Ray-Ban sexed up and it looks much more discreet, then maybe it can become something that's more common.
So I think we'll take one last question from.
What are the good apps for video editing in iOS platform?
Okay, so one of the links that I sent to you is all the apps that I recommend, and under that session there's 3 apps for editing that I recommend. But if you're editing for the internet, which means the frame rate is irrelevant, then iMovie is perfectly fine, and it could do split audio editing and it could do video overlays. So have a look at the second Vimeo video that I sent you at the start of that queue. The one that we actually use for broadcast in RTE is one called Pinnacle Studio, which was originally an iPad app, but they released an iPhone version of it about 6 months ago. And actually that's quite powerful. It's got frame accurate editing. And one of the things that apparently is in their roadmap is the ability to have on-screen audio level metering as well, which is a big thing that's missing from the editing applications right now, but it's coming.
So thank you very much, Glenn. It was a brilliant session. I think you're going to have to come back sometime very soon.
Well, I'll watch your pop-up newsroom now with interest again this year, Priya, for certain.
Thanks a million. Thank you so much.
No problem.